Are you feeling tired, anxious, super stressed, and just plain worn out? This isn't about escaping your reality. It's about gently rewiring it. Hi creatives, Lauren Elizabeth here with Lauren Elizabeth Animal Art, and I create pet and wildlife drawing and painting tutorials for creatives battling anxiety, depression, and addiction. Join me as I paint this cheerful, happy border collie acrylic painting designed to not only promote brain plasticity while you learn basic techniques needed to paint any dog, guiding you through these techniques step by step, beginner friendly, and also guiding your nervous system out of high alert and into a more calm, receptive state. So bring your tired self and your willingness to make mistakes and breathe. I have a traceable outline link down below along with a list of materials. Let's get to it. All right, creative, so I'm using the Strathmore mixed media paper, my all-time favorite, that I've taped down with painter's tape. I have a link to that paper down below. Use a canvas, 8x10 or larger if you want. And here we go, let's get ready to make mistakes. Now you do not have to use this yellow if you don't have it. I wanted to explore a vivid yellow. It's called Yellow Deep by Master's Touch. Use any other color. You could use cadmium yellow, even yellow ochre, but I'll apply that and some white. So just very simply, equal parts white and deep yellow. Such a sunny color. Now, if you have a sided canvas, you're probably going to need to mix up a little bit more than me, but I'm working with a mixed media paper by Strathmore. Now, if you're new to using mixed media paper or you're thinking about it, I'm always going to recommend either Strathmore or Canon brand. It's super thick, durable, really smooth surface, and I can add layer after layer of acrylics and it doesn't warp. All right, so I'm going to go with my size 5 angle brush to get it around here. Use a larger brush if you want. I'll probably go to a larger brush for some of these larger areas, but starting off and working around the fur. I want you to not worry about making mistakes, make them and learn from them. Like going over your traceable is entirely okay. In fact, we want that so we don't have to go back and paint in little specks later. Besides, if you're using yellow white like this low dominant color here, you'll likely see your sketch line underneath this light yellow. So this is the back, the dog's back, so I'm just going to do this little area here. All right, so as we're working on our background, getting our hands and a little bit of our shoulders and arms warmed up, I want you to take 5 deep breaths in through the nose and a long exhale out. You ready? Let's do that 5 times, in and out. Now, like I always do, I don't like to just use one boring old color. I like to add some variety. So as I move down, I'm going to pull in more of this deep yellow to make it even more sunny, to match the personality of this sweet dog. Now, paint at your own pace. If I go too fast, be sure to use that pause and play button on your screen. And also, something that I don't mention enough, depending on your personality, you may want to work through this in a day, but it's much easier, and I recommend working through this in increments of, say, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And you can always cover your paint palette with aluminum foil or saran wrap like I do. It'll keep that paint wet for up to 3 days. So we'll let that dry for a little bit, and then we'll get working on those eyes, nose, and mouth. So I'm going to refresh my water before we do that. So I already have white, we'll be using that. I'll also add in some black on my paint palette. We're going to work on the eyes, nose, and mouth. I'll make a navy blue using Finalizing blue and black and white. So I'm going to add some phthalo blue to my paint palette. Also, a go-to color for the tongue is permanent red and raw sienna. Okay, black, Finalizing blue, permanent red, raw sienna. All right, so let's mix up our colors for the eyes. First, I'm going to mix up a dark gray. So I have black with a bit of white, making a dark gray. I don't want much white, but I don't want to use just black. And I want to mix up a decent amount of that, so that's white with black. Now for that nose, I want to start with a navy blue, and we can add more colors over top, but we're going to start more on that blue side as a base. So I'll pull some of that gray, add in some Finalizing blue and white. So again, I'm adding into a separate pile of this dark navy blue, Finalizing blue, and more white. Now I want to go a bit lighter to create a medium and light value, but before I do that, I need to mix up some more, so I'm going to add in more phthalo blue, black, and white. All right, once more, we're going to pull some aside in a separate pile and add in phthalo blue and more white. Oh dear, I got some yellow in there. Things are just too tight in here. So I'm going to try again. Finalizing blue, white, and black. But now for the iris, the colored part of the eye. I'm going to mix up a pretty simple brown. It's just raw sienna. I'll add raw sienna, some of my deep yellow, and white. That's raw sienna, deep yellow, and white. Get that a little bit darker, adding in a little bit more raw sienna. All right, so we want a really small spot brush for these eyes. They are very small, which is why I'm going to go to my smallest spot brush, 4/0 by Arteza. All-time favorite brushes, guys. I've been using these since 2021. So we'll just simply fill in the pupil, fill in the border around the eyes with our dark gray with a clean, damp spot brush. So if you're new to my tutorials, something I often do is say, make sure your brush is clean and damp. We don't want our brushes full of paint or water. We also don't want it dry. We want it damp with just a small amount of paint on the ends of our brush, not filling or loading those brushes with paint over time, and pretty quickly our paintbrushes can get sticky and start pulling or tugging on our canvas or paper, and also make it very difficult to control our brush and do detail work. So making sure your brush is always clean and damp, and having good brushes like these Arteza brushes that I've been using for many years really makes this process that much more fun. I have a link to those Arteza brushes down below. I use the variety pack and the detail brush pack. Now, what can really help our brains and bodies reset and rest is just turning off the distractions that are pulling at us. So whether it's those distracting notifications from your phone, I'm going to recommend you turn those off, or those anxious, distracting thoughts, I'm going to ask you to let them go, just surrender them. For me, I like to replace those racing, anxious thoughts with God's Word. And I have a verse for you, John 16:24. Until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. Now, because those are in such tiny little areas of white, I am concerned that I'd get some of our light brown into the black. So I'm going to let those dry and fill in the nostrils now with our dark gray. But then we'll go quickly into the rest of the nose, because I won't actually outline the top of it. It's getting just hit with too much light. I will outline the bottom of it though. Let me show you what I mean. We'll just fill in these nostrils with our dark gray. As you do this, do your best to keep those nostrils about the same size and symmetrical. And then for the bottom, because it's getting so little light, I am going to take this dark gray and paint the bottom. And what I'm going to do is just work up just to about there, and then only leave this white outline. If you watch me right underneath the nostrils, I'll leave this bit of white because that's where it's getting highlighted, and we'll use a medium value, almost a medium to light value there. And I'll just kind of like block it in around it, but leaving that white. And I like to work in these small areas wet into wet. And so I'm not just going to leave that dry. I want to start moving up. So I've switched to our medium value navy blue now. So here I go, painting right up against that nostril and right into some of the dark gray and up. I'll move up around the top of the nostril on both sides. And because of that light source is hitting the strongest on the right side, but definitely all from above because this dog is outside, I'm going to start with the lighter navy blue that we have. Our lightest one, I'll start blending up and partially into that darker navy blue below it. It drops down a little further on the right side. So with our lighter, it's not very light, but our lighter navy blue, I'm going to fill in the rest of the white on the nose, but work at a steady pace so that I can blend in more of a lighter navy blue that we'll be mixing up at the top. Now I'll add in some white into a corner of this blue, just a little bit. We don't need to add too much. And then slowly get that a little bit lighter at the top. It'll require a few layers to get that a little bit lighter because of how strong blue and black is. And notice I'm not bringing it down all the way here. I'll bring it down to about right where it starts to turn a bit darker above those nostrils. So now we're going to work backwards, moving through these values from lightest to darkest so we can get rid of that line and do more blending. And then because I brought that down, I'm going to add a little bit more white to my mixture of the navy blue with white. Lighten it up again at the very top. See how I have that nice smooth gradient from light to medium to dark. Now, if you're relatively new to acrylics and or dog paintings, I have a really great, helpful golden retriever tutorial for you that I'll also link down below. I highly recommend this one. Okay, so now for the highlighted area by the nose, I'm going to take a little bit of this, I'm going to go down in value, make it a little darker than the lightest value we applied to the nose by mixing in a little bit more of our medium value so it has more white, but it's not as dark as our original medium value navy blue. And ever so carefully over top that white that we left under both nostrils, I'll carefully paint that in. I will bring it down a little bit on the right, over some of that dark gray, and a little bit up as well on the left side and the right, okay? So I brought it down into that gray a little bit on the right, brought it up on both sides of the nostrils. I came down a little bit too much with my medium value, so I'm going back to my dark navy blue, not the dark gray, and lifting that up a little bit more on the left side above that left nostril. Now, you know what's really fun? We can add the exposed skin that we see on the top of the nose and below the nose with this blue. It's actually even lighter in value, so I'm going to add more white to it, even more white, and paint that right up here above the nose with my spot brush. I'm actually going to create a shape with it. See how it is split? It is this fur texture. I'm using this line texture right above the nose. I'm even going to add more white to that so I can really tell what is what, where that nose begins and where this marking starts. All right, now I'll go to my medium value blue and do the same thing below the nose, except with the darker value now. I'm cutting straight down over top the very bottom of the nose and over, but leaving a little gap, leaving a gap here and above the lip on the other side. And I'm going to pull in some more of that white so it lightens up as I move to the left. Just getting that a little bit lighter on the left side, wrapping around that nose, but not all the way. Just like here, I left a gap, I'm leaving a gap there too. I'll do that on the right side, that same thing. Picking up some more of that lighter navy blue as I move over to the right of the muzzle. I'm going to try something because I am not completely content. So I have my medium value blue. I'm just going to put the smallest, thinnest little line separating that marking, that exposed skin / marking between the nose and that area. Just the smallest little line. I might want to soften that later, but for now, I'm going to leave it. Then let's move to those eyes. Pretty simple, but it will take a bit of a steady hand. As best you can, paint with this lighter brown that we mixed up. Not around the entire eye, just below the pupil. We are going to cover this with a light gray, that really strong highlight above both pupils. Now, if you're entirely new to acrylics or you're just new to the language of color and value, they're very different. Color is just the hue of something, whether it's yellow, whether it's magenta, whether it's purple. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of that hue. Now, my method of simplifying this is just find your 3 core values. When you're being guided on value and not color, you can use any color in the rainbow. Just try your best to darken it up using a bit of the dark color added to it. Lighten it up by adding more white or a lighter color to it. And then once you have your dark and your light value, you mix a little bit of those two together, you have your medium value. So don't make it too complex, just focus on finding your dark, your medium, and your light value. Let me give you some tips here. If you have a dark colored dog, instead of black or dark brown, go with a purple or a blue or a mix of the two. Let's say you're painting a light brown cat. Try going with a mix of light brown and some purples or some pinks. So next what I'm going to do is take some of my white in a corner and some of the darkest gray. I want this to be a light value, so I'll add more white to this. And then what I'm going to do is paint in that highlight, extending it a little bit. So over on this eye, I'm going to extend it over to the left just a smidge. On this eye, I'm going to do the same. And then I'm going to shape it with my dark gray. If you need to shape the entire pupil, but for instance, on this right eye, I want to lift up that highlight a little bit, push it up a little. On this eye, I'm going to take that pupil up and over a little bit, all the way to that border. And as I'm doing this, I really want to make sure I keep them symmetrical. I'm going to bring this black up a little bit, over top some of that gray, curving it so I keep this nice circular pupil. This dog is extremely excited. If you need to go back to that gray, I do right here. This is almost like a little peanut. It almost looks like a little peanut on that eye, the shape of the highlight. And this one is a little bit more rounded on that eye. Okay, so let's move on to this mouth area. Dog mouths are quite complex. The teeth, the gums, the tongue. So let's mix up. We haven't mixed up a color for the tongue yet. We're gonna do that next. We can actually use this color, what we used for the eye, to help us mix up that red. It's like a brownish red for the tongue. So I'll pull some aside, add some more white and permanent red to it. Adding in more white. I want to have a dark, medium, and light value mixed up at least. And so a raw sienna with permanent red and white is my go-to for painting tongues. So this looks like my medium value. For my dark value, I'm just going to pull some aside, add a bit of dark gray. Won't need much of that. I don't have a whole lot of paint, so I'm just going to add a bit more permanent red and white to it. I'll also be adding more raw sienna. So that's permanent red, raw sienna, dark gray, and a bit of our previous color. And for the light value, I want it to be more pink. So I'm going to start with my white, actually. Pull in some permanent red and a little bit of raw sienna. So that's permanent red, raw sienna, and lots of white. So I'm going to use my size 0 round brush, clean and damp, and I'm going to start by painting in that tongue, starting from the back, inside the mouth, and working front. I'm going to paint over my line. I can see that it goes straight down. It's literally going straight under where this comes to a point and down. So I'm going to take note of that, work in with our dark value. And start painting right along that line. And where we really see those dark values come up into some of the light values is by the teeth. There's some shadows being created by the teeth. So there's 2 teeth here, 2 teeth back here, So I'm going to add a little bit more than I need of paint in those areas. And then I'm going to quickly blend in the medium values so I don't get, it's actually drying pretty quick to my paper. I'm going to go straight into our medium value pinkish brown. So I'm going to blend into that and fill in the entire rest of the tongue. So going over the previous value, blending, and then also painting over the white with this pinkish brown. I'm covering up some of the dark value in the front, but I'll add some back in a little bit. I just want to make sure that doesn't get too dark up front because of the light source hitting it. Now for this next step, I'll be using the dry brush technique where I don't go in with more paint. I'm using the little bit on my brush to add a very thin layer over top some of my work. I'm going to pull some of this light value over the dark value so I kind of soften it. It's not as dark, but I still see it. Join it to the front, pushing some of that dark value back, going along the left and right sides of this invisible line now that we covered up. Now before that dries, let's go in with our light values, our light pinkish brown. I really see those lights around this tooth where it's pushing the tongue up. I see it right at the front of the tongue. You're almost always going to have highlights there at the very front. Wraps around to the front over top this tooth. Over top this one. And notice I'm leaving these lines, these unwanted lines where the medium value meets the light value. We want to smooth that out. But before we do that, while we still have this light value on our brush, if you watch me and then you give it a try, I'm going to add this to the front of the tongue. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to create a little gap in the center of the tongue where we have that line. That line is almost going to come to the end of the tongue, but I'll have a line, a perpendicular line, stopping it at the very end of that tongue. All right, so next I'm going to go to my medium value, mix it with a little bit of the light value, and we're going to soften those lines. Going back to that color with a little bit more of our medium value added to it, I'm going to pull that back even more. So once again, following the light value gap, I'm going to create another gap in the center of the mouth. Now I'm going to soften this dark value over the left side. And then I'm going to do a mix between the dark value and the medium value. Again, my paintbrush is not loaded with paint, just a little bit, and I'm going to push that darkness back again. Just like we did with the nose, we're going to work backwards. We start dark, get a little lighter, and then a little lighter, and then we adjust the values. Now that's dark value inside the mouth isn't dark enough. I often have to do this where I add a bit more dark gray or just a little bit of black with some of our dark value. add some more darkness inside that mouth and blend it forward. Notice I'm not taking it all the way out to the side. I'm curving that shadow inside the mouth, not going over those back teeth. And then with a little bit of a spot brush, because I want to bring that to a point, ever so carefully bring that to a point right about there. I'm using my 3/0 Arteza spot brush, but then very quickly I'm going to switch to my round brush. And watch me, this brush is clean and damp. This is my size 0 round brush. Before that dries, I'm going to blend that nicely in with the medium value and some of the first dark value we made. I'll also revisit the area over top those teeth where we applied the dark value before. So we darkened up our darkest value. Now we're going to lighten up our lightest value. So taking white to this lightest value, and I'll actually need my spot brush for this. This will really stand out when we add that dark gray. But right at the front of the tongue where it's kind of curling up and even a little bit in, that's where I'm going to add this. I can also add that much lighter pink to the edge of this tongue, but doesn't go all the way in. This part of the tongue is getting highlighted, same with this part of the tongue. A little bit above this tooth, just a little bit, and that one. There's just a little bit of this medium value pink that I want to add right here. In fact, I'll blend it with a little bit of the dark value, not our darkest value, but the first one. Darken that a little bit there. And then with this one, this same dark value with my spot brush, I'll use that now to bring that line all the way up. And because we want this tongue to look kind of moist, I'm going to take a glaze, which is watered down, just left some water on my brush, added it to this light pink, and just ever so carefully adding a little bit more moisture. So I'm dabbing and then I'm wiping some off so it's really subtle. Even a little bit in there, just to make it look a little bit more wet. So now we're going to start working around the tongue. I'll still use my spot brush for this, using a dark gray. It's a little bit tricky to see, but I'm going to take what I can see and roll with it, which is going underneath the tongue with a very thin dark gray outline. I will work around both teeth. and around that tooth. Also on the other side. I'll work right around the back teeth with a dark outline, but I'll stop right there. I won't move up. On this side, also the same thing. Now we can get a bit of pinks and even some whites in the gums, and that's why I'm going to go to our medium value. I'm going to add a bit of this pink right here. That's a little too dark. I'm going to go to our light value. Right along this dark gray that I put along the back left tooth. Same thing on the right side. And then going to our light value, which is this light pink with the white, I will add a very thin border in front of that dark gray. A lot of layers here, lots of layers. Okay, so let's go back to our dark gray, same brush, same spot brush. And now watch me before you give this a try. I'm gonna work this dark gray underneath this pink and then create this bumpy texture. That extend all the way back, but we'll just stay right here for now. Same on the other side. I probably don't need as many bumps, but I'll work along that line, even along the tongue line here, okay? Bringing that dark line along the tongue on the right, and 2 bumps. I'll zoom in here so you can really see this, but I'm gonna partially paint over top the bottom of that pink line and cover up more of that white on the chin. Create a little curve on both sides. See how I did that? Little curve down and over to the center. I'm thinning out some of this pink on this side. All right, next is really cool. I like this part. We're going to mix some of our dark gray with some of our light pink. And that's what we're going to paint. This next layer, we're working out. Working along those bumps, below them, that is. It's a little too dark, so I'm going to add some white to it. It's not showing up against that dark gray. So I got it lighter with some more white. I will bring this, notice how I'm coming in. You see how I'm coming in? Coming in right next to this left tooth and bringing this down and around the front, over top the rest of the little bit of white that we have left over. This also wraps into that point, goes in towards those teeth. Now I'm going to add more dark gray to this so I can blend it in with this area and up. I'll do that on both sides. This pretty much stops on this side and then gets darker. But so I'm just going to blend a bit of the dark gray in with this pinkish gray. Now to blend those slightly different gray values here on this right side, blend in more of your pinkish gray. How you doing? How are you feeling? Pause if you need to take a break, stand up and stretch. Take note to how you're feeling. This can be challenging, but also very rewarding and skill building process. And now we'll work on the teeth, but we'll still have some more white on that mouth. So I'm gonna go in into my gray. I'm gonna mix up a little bit of the dark gray with white. I wanna create a medium gray. So get in enough white there so it's not a dark gray, not a light gray, and we'll paint the rest of the white in on the mouth. This sort of fades, so I'm actually going to jump straight to the dark gray because right underneath it, I'm going to blend these two areas together because right underneath it gets darker. Same on this side. Go up to about where these lines are, where it meets the face, and then blend the lighter medium gray. And then finish off that white. And guess what? My traceable needs to come down a little bit further. So here I go with this medium gray. I'm going to work right in front of this chin. There's a little bit of that chin that we see. Now I want to maintain the proportions of the other areas that we painted in. I slightly went over some of the dark gray with our medium gray here. So I'm going to revisit that dark gray, making sure that that curve that goes to a point in the middle of the mouth is still there. Now, do you notice there's too much dark in this area? So I'm going to add more white to our pinkish gray. Add in a bit of a wet highlight, make it look damp right over top here and also right over top here. I also want to add even more white to that to get a little bit of, too light. I toned it down. A little bit of that damp look on the gums where we have that pinkish gray. And then I want to add more white, okay? The front area is just not light enough. I'm adding more white to lighten this area up because it is getting more light. There, that helps a lot. Next comes the teeth, and I wouldn't just use white. Light gray is okay, but I would even add a bit of yellow to it. So I'm going to add just a little bit of a background color, or just add a tiny, tiny bit of your deep yellow to light gray. Add lots of white to it, even more. And with my spot brush, I'm going to paint in all the teeth. I'm going to add the smallest little tooth right here. I don't know if it's a tooth or not, but I'm just going to add one right there. Over top that dark gray border. Hi creatives, sorry to interrupt, but if you could really use a boost of color and joy, and you'd like to paint your own household pets, or maybe you're starting to consider accepting pet portraits, I encourage you to check out my Pet Portrait Masterclass. Here you can reconnect with joy while mastering colorful, realistic pet painting techniques, even as a beginner. So you learn my easy 12-step pet portrait painting process, the fundamental pet painting techniques, my simple drawing system, basic color theory, and you learn how to do all this in a relaxing, calming way. So again, that's linked down below. If this would bless you or a friend, check it out. Let's get back to it. All right, so we have the eyes, nose, mouth, and on to, we go to the ears. Now these ears, look, I can see a little bit of purple and pink in there, but they are pretty dark. So I'm gonna go, guess what? We're gonna go in with our tongue colors. This one, I'm gonna use my size 5 angle brush. Now, if that dark value has dried, it's a bit of dark gray, permanent red, raw sienna, and white. And we're gonna start small, working from the inside out on this right ear. My size 2 filbert brush before it dries. And for this fur, I'm going to add a bunch of different colors, but the base will be dark blue. So we're going to go to our dark blue, blend this in to the inside first where it's pretty dark. I'm doing this circular motion, and I'm using my dark navy blue. That's just with white, black, and phthalocyanin blue. Now we're going to add quite a bit of layers to this ear. This is the first one for the shadow inside the ear, which I've extended to the bottom right. I'm going to go back to our brown red color that we were using for the first layer of this ear to blend it so it's that nice smooth transition. Now notice there's darkness on the outside, inside of the ear, and it starts about here. So I'm going to take a little bit of this dark blue with a little bit of this pinkish brown, dab, dab, dab. Notice here, I'm not taking it all the way to the outside of the ear. I'm working over top some of our pink brown work. And then fill in the entire left with a very bold line of our dark navy blue. Going all the way on the left side of the ear now. Notice I'm not adding any fur texture. Oh dear, good thing that didn't get on the paper. So this ear goes off the canvas or your paper, but then wraps around on the other side. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush because this is getting a bit tricky. I'm switching to my size 0 liner brush. So with my navy blue, I'm going to paint this, rust the white in. All right, so this is going to stick out a little bit into the yellow, and that's where I'm going to start to cluster my lines now, cutting over top that yellow. Now, if you watch me first before you try this, I'm using a glaze. I don't really add a lot of water to my paint here. I'm just picking up my brush and it's very damp, my size 5 angle brush. I'm picking up a small amount of the dark navy blue and then carefully pulling that down over top some of the pinkish brown at an angle and then fading that with my soft brush strokes. I missed a little bit on this side, so I'm going to go back with my navy blue and my size 0 liner brush. Paint that down a little further and also cut up into some of that yellow. Just cleaning up the angle of this ear. I have those fuzzies coming out right over here, but then it gets a bit straighter at the top. All right, let's repeat that exact same thing. We have a lot of layers of fur over top this ear and inside and in front. And so let's just get the base down again for the left ear before this pink red dries. So I'm going to fill in the majority of it. And then go in with our filbert brush again for the navy blue. So it's everything we just did, now opposite. So we'll go pretty strong with our navy blue on this side, keeping this edge about the same, that thick border on the top. Now we see the whole ear, and it is quite pointy. So bring that navy blue all the way up to the top of the ear and around on the left side. And that's going to be a little thinner. I even left a little bit of a border there in the traceable so you could see. Before this pink brown dries, we're going to go in with our navy blue at the base of the ear, inside that left ear. Add some at the bottom, and then go back to our pinkish brown to blend that above it. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm also peeking over to the other right ear to make sure the shadow is symmetrical. One is not much bigger than the other, so you might need to bring up and adjust the other shadow on that right ear. Now I'm demonstrating two separate acrylic painting techniques here. One is the dabbing technique where I pull off some of that paint with my finger. Also the dry brush technique where I only apply some paint to my brush and then I keep blending and blending with the little that's left on my brush on both ears. These are two techniques I use when I can no longer blend those two colors. And now I'm relying on a very thin amount of paint to help me transition from dark to medium to light. Let's try this again. Raw sienna, permanent red with white and a little bit of gray. All I'm doing is just remixing our pinkish brown. We're gonna need that. That's with permanent red, raw sienna, our dark gray, and a bit of white. I don't need to bring that all the way up, but I do need to bring that on the left side. And then I'll fill in the rest of the white with my navy blue. Doing some blending too. And let's move on with our liner brush to get that fur texture on both the left and right sides of the bottom of the ear. So I'm going to go back to this area on the muzzle where it's white, and I'm going to work a gray. So we're actually going to use a technique where we fill in that white, but also make it light enough where it doesn't entirely cover this up, but lightens it up. So I'm going to go to this might be too big. I think I'll just start with my angle brush, my size 5. Use whatever brush you feel comfortable with. I'm going to use a gray, so I'm just going to mix up white Tiny bit of black. I'll just take some of my dark gray. Be careful how much black you add. We're going for a light gray, so just a little bit of black and lots of white. Size 2 filbert brush, that's what I'm holding now. Now we certainly will go over this again to lighten it up and to join it with little hairs that go up the forehead. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water. So it's a lighter value glaze and a wash because we're going over some white. I'm gonna paint that over top some of this blue. So I want it to be dark underneath the nose, which is why I'm gonna pull some of that glaze off. And then go in with a smaller brush. I'll go in with my 2\0 liner brush and paint in the rest of the white. Right underneath here where it gets lighter. And it actually comes to a point right at the darkest point above the tongue, below the nose, and back out again. That's why this liner brush is really helpful for this. All right, so we're practicing 3 different acrylic painting techniques. One is a wash. That's just where we add a thin amount of paint and the first layer over top of white canvas or paper. That's considered a wash. A glaze we practiced before. You're applying a thin amount of paint over a layer of dried paint. And now we're practicing lines. We've already been doing that. But with lines, you need a very fine detail brush. You apply very little paint to your detail brush, adding a consistent amount of pressure throughout. And if you have a shaky hand, you can improve that by just practicing lines. Lots and lots of line work. I am gonna add more white to this to paint in a lighter top part over this gray. The top is getting more light, so I'm gonna lighten it up. Now, to make your life easier, I recommend switching to a filbert brush or even back to your angle brush. It doesn't make sense to fill in such a small area with a detail brush. It can be a little hard to fill in an area with a liner brush, which is why I switched to my filbert brush. So do you notice how we've softened and kind of faded that blue mustache into this muzzle? Well, I'm going to bring it down once again with a very damp brush filled with white paint. I'm going to make it fade even more, especially on that right side. All right, creatives, excellent work. We're now going to work on the fur, but in order to do that, we need to create some space so that we can mix up fresh new colors. I have a glass paint palette here. I absolutely love it. I'm going to wash it off with my soap and water, also refresh my water. I'm going to recommend you do the same. This glass paint palette I have linked down below. It saves on so much waste. It's a very quick cleanup. I actually have 2, so I could be working on commissions and tutorials around the same time. Okay, I'm adding white. I'll also add more Finalizing blue and black to my paint palette. I'll also add a bit of violet. To nicely complement those yellows. Okay, so we have gray, medium gray, just like we did here, that we're going to add over above the chest and a little bit down here. We have our browns that we're going to be adding around the mouth, hair around the ears, and on the eyebrows. But the dominant color here is black and different shades of gray. So instead of black, I'm going to go again with the navy blue. So we're going to mix up some dark navy blue with Finalizing blue and black. Going to add a bit more Finalizing blue. A little bit more blue. I want there to be more blue than black because of how strong black is. Okay, I'll pick some of that up, add a bit more blue, and then white this time. Now I'm showing you color mixing 101. I like to start with the darks and then pick a bit of that up in a separate pile and add in more color for the medium value. I'll do this to get at least my 3 core values, my dark value, my medium value, and my light value. I think I need more, so I'm going to pull in just a little bit more black and a good amount of blue and then more white. We also want to have a good amount because we're going to take some of that into our light value. Okay, so I'm going to pick up some of that, pull it aside, add in more white and a bit more blue. Okay, a little bit more blue. Now your colors aren't going to look exactly like mine, but they're going to be pretty close. And we just want to make sure on the dark side, okay, values on the dark side, because we're working with a black animal, we have a dark, medium, and light value. And we're going to build from dark to light very slowly. So if you're not quite catching this, let me explain it in a different way. When you're painting different animals in different lighting at different fur coats, I'm never aiming for that same light value or that same dark value. If the majority of that dog is a black or a dark brown, my values are gonna go more on the dark side. That light value will look more like a medium value. If I'm painting a white animal, those light values will be very light, almost white. And even the dark values may even look like a medium value. Does this make sense now? We have quite a bit of fur texture that we have to add. My concern though is to cover the white and to get these darkest areas in first. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll do this with my size 2 filbert brush, get in those dark and medium values, and then we'll start cutting in with our smaller brushes to get this fur texture. So make sure your filbert brush is clean and damp. All right, so the darkest areas that I see that looks like a very dark gray in our photo, we have like this line coming out around the face. It just frames the face. And that's where I'm going to work first, adding more of a flat layer. So even in the first layer, I want to apply my brush strokes in the same direction that fur is laying. So that's why my brush strokes are horizontal and at a slight angle down into the left on the left side of the face. I'm going to pull it out just a little bit over top that white and at the base of those lines for that fur, but I won't bring it all the way out into that yellow background. I'll bring it down to that line where we have the gray fur beginning. And then right around here we have that tan fur. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just be adding that color over top this black that I'm applying, or this dark navy blue. And there's also lighter fur here too. I'm going to pull that up a little further. And then as that's wet, I'm going to start framing that face. So I just picked up some of her medium value. So now in a reference, I'm looking for all the medium gray areas, and I'm applying this medium navy blue. This value is helping us shape the face, making it a bit more rounded and helping us to push it forward. So I'm going to pull this curving line that's also blending in with some of those navy blues down around the left side of the muzzle. But if you watch me carefully, I will be leaving some white around the left side of that smile, because that's where we'll be adding browns and some of our yellows. Okay, so I'm bringing this down right in front of where we began that gray, but leaving a little gap of white because we'll add some tan there. Bringing this in. It's not dark enough, so going with the dark value. This is our dark value navy blue. Here it gets much darker around the eye. So carefully I'll work on that below and like hugging the bottom of that left eyebrow. Do you see why I use the dark navy blue instead of the medium? Because right under these eyebrows, it's much darker. Now, do you notice on that left eye, there's this outline of this light gray around the eyes? I'm also going to make sure I get that in, but how I'm going to do that is just leave the smallest little white border around the eye as best I can. I'm washing that off. I'm going back to the medium navy blue, working up and around all the way to the inside right of this left ear. Now we're going to have lots of light values that rest over top here, but we're just starting with our dark and medium values first. I'll bring those over a little bit more, covering up that white. I brought it to about the center of the ear, and then I'll switch back to my darkest navy blue. Now, do you notice there's just a little bit of this lightness right here, and then it skips, and then it gets darker again? I'm going to add that darkness with the navy blue over top the medium value navy blue. Just to give it a bit more shape. Okay, and now I can start covering up more of that white with that navy blue, but not going all the way over here. I want to make sure I refine that texture with my detail brushes. Quick note, I mentioned this before, but the dog is outside. We're getting lots of light hitting the top of the dog, all over, but especially coming from above. All right, so I've got the dark navy blue on my brush. I'm going to bring a little bit of that down right here. Do a symmetrical with dark navy blue, but going up a little bit higher now on this right eyebrow. Hugging the bottom and leaving that little white outline around the eye. And this also comes down. It's just framing now the top of that muzzle. Bringing this forward. I always like to add a little bit more than I need because I can always fix it up with those lighter layers over top. Okay, now do you know how we added the darkness here? We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So pretty much everything we just did on that left side, we're going to repeat again on the right. I'm going to make sure my brush is clean and damp. No sticky, clumpy paint on my brush. I'm going to get that off and then go back to my dark navy blue. Do the same thing we started with where we began along that fur that's sticking out now on the right side. Bring it all the way up to that ear and in a little bit towards the center, bottom of the ear. I'm adding a little bit more than I need. Bringing that dark navy blue to this line, but not bringing it all the way down because we have that lighter fur there. Going to my medium value navy blue. All right, so now let's start pushing that out, and then also at the same time looking at the other side of the face so I can make it symmetrical. I don't want one side being higher or thinner. I want this to be about the same distance from here to here on both sides. That might take some working, so be patient. You can always make adjustments. Very forgiving medium here, acrylics is. I'll start working this up in front of the ear on the right ear. I'll bring that navy blue in towards the muzzle, attaching it to this darker part of the muzzle on the right side, but leaving this part, leaving a little gap of white on the right side of the mouth now. Just like we did on that side above this left eye, I'm going to go to my navy blue and add, it connects to this dark value here. I'm going to add it right above that right eye now. All right, let's go to our light value now, guys. It's definitely, if you're having trouble knowing where those light values are, we kind of left the white. That's where there's going to be a lot of the light values, but not all the time. Sometimes we'll have a mix between the medium and light values that we have to add there. Where I know for sure there's light values is right on the top of the nose. Always identify that light source and where it's hitting the animal the strongest. That's where you place the highlights, or also known as the light values. As I'm applying this to the top of the muzzle, I'm also blending it in with some of those medium values on the left and right sides of it. I'll bring that up, straight up. I know that light's hitting there pretty strong. And the fur, I'm actually using my brush, applying these strokes in the direction the fur is going. So that's where I'll add those light values. Working along those, right along those dark values. I really don't like to make a dark value right up against a light value. So you always want to avoid a very dark value up against a light value. You want to have them connected with a joiner value. I call them a medium value. It could be a very small bit of it to connect them. So we're also going to carry this up on the top of the head where that light is coming from behind and above. Going to fill in the white on the forehead. And there's a bit of a curving shape. I'll show you. Watch me as I create a bit of a curve right here with my light values. It's very subtle, but do you see it? So with my size 2 filbert brush, I'm using the dabbing technique with my brush this time, not my hand. barely touching the paper, and I'm just making that more of a rounded shape on the forehead. I'll pull it down a little further on the left side. All right, another area we see the light values is right above the left and right eye. So with my filbert brush, keeping these brush strokes actually pretty delicate, pretty light, not pushing my brush down very much. I am gonna fill in that white and then pull them over top the eyes. Now before I jump to my smaller brushes, I'm gonna take it down along this muzzle just to the top so I can make that symmetrical on both sides. And I have switched to my size 0 round brush because now around here we have mixes between our medium and light value as well as up here. So let's mix. I'm pulling some of the light value, mixing it with some of our medium value. So I'll start with 3 core values and then mix from those. I'm going to test this out. Perfect. So we also have another highlight below the eye on both eyes. So I'm going to leave a little bit of white there and paint it right underneath that dark value, connecting it to this light value here and covering up more of that white. I'll do the same side while trying to keep things looking symmetrical below the right eye. And this attaches to that dark value there. And I'll even cover up some of that white. Yep. But because that's extended out there, it also makes sense that I pull this down over there on the left side. All right, so going back to that same value, I'm going to cover up some of this white and bring it down. I'm going to do the same thing on the left side and bring it down, but not too far down because I actually see I can go back to my light value. Going back to my light value, I actually see that I can lighten this area up here and then lighten this area up and in by the eye. Bringing it up on the inside of both eyes. Now, something I talk a lot about in my masterclass is how values will create their own shape. So that's what you just practiced, creating the unique shape each value makes, stacking them one over top the other. All right, so let's get these medium values, the dark connected to the light values with this mix of our light and medium. Okay, this and this, these are those 2 values we mixed. Now I'm gonna use this brush, I'm gonna push it down so I have not too much paint on my brush, so I can begin to add a little bit more refined fur texture. I will actually cut in a little bit, leaving a little bit of a dark gap there where we added that darkness. I'll do the same thing on this right side, cutting in with those lines, clusters of lines. And these are actually gonna come up a little bit over top and in front of the ear. This size 1 round brush is not ideal for creating fur texture. So if you need to, I recommend a liner brush or rigger brush to get those refined lines. I have to go back to my light value because I don't want to leave any line. See this line? going to go back to my light value, using these fine lines to add that texture and get rid of that line. Now I'm going to go to my medium value, again mixed with my light value. And we actually have a little bit of this coming down from below the eye, a little bit less on their right side. Now make sure you add more of the medium value in with that mix, because this is definitely a subtle value. It's not super loud. I'm shaping the face a little bit more as I'm doing this. Now there's some medium value that we can add with this color around the eyebrows. Not only did I leave some white, but with these short lines, I'm going to have it wrap around that eyebrow. Same with this one, but it's not going to go over the entire eyebrow. You see it only goes around this part, it kind of skips the top. Okay, so now let's get a little smaller with our brushes. This is how you want to do it. You want to start with your larger brushes for that background. Go a little bit smaller. We worked with our angle brush and our filbert brush. And now a bit smaller. We had a round brush, and now even smaller with a liner brush. All right, so a little smaller with the brushes. I'm using my 2/0 liner brush. And this will take some time because it doesn't hold much water or some paint, and you don't even want it to. And while I'm holding my hand so I don't go over my work, I'm going to carefully go over and make these lines, cut over top the yellow, cover up that white, and having them kind of overlapping, going up, some going down. So we also want to make sure we cover up all that leftover white. We want to draw the lines out, also create some clumpy fur and some single lines and some clumps. Now, if you need to, go back with your deep yellow and white and just touch up the background on that left side around the fur we just painted. Or if you don't have very much left, we're actually going to be going with light grays and light browns to add a bit more color on that side too. And the right, once we've painted that back. All right, so before we move on, I'm gonna mix a light navy blue, the lightest we've mixed, with our light navy blue from this pile with added white. So I'm just adding more white to it, and ever so carefully, in those areas I mentioned before where we left some of the white, I'll outline the eye. Same on this side. And anything that you need to touch up, we have our colors here so we can touch it up. Either with the dark navy blue or the medium blue. I'm going to actually use the medium blue to draw this down and connect it, actually adding in a little bit of the dark value, the dark navy blue, to blend that. See how we had it here? I'm going to mix some of the medium blue with the navy blue. Add that there, and a little bit more here, curving that down. And once more, I'm just going to touch up this eye with the light navy blue. There we go. All right, so we can't do that side yet until we've done the back. And I'm not going to go in with the dark navy blue for the back because of how much light it's getting. I'll go with probably a mix between the light and medium value blue. Let me test it out. I'm going to start with the medium blue. I think I can do that probably on the outside. I'm going to go in with my size 2 filbert brush and the medium value blue on the outside of the body here and down here, but closer to the inside, I'm going to add the light navy blue. And yes, we are going to go over that fur. But not over this dark strip. We'll just pull those dark strands out over top this once it's dried. And I'm following the fur direction too as I do this, which is going to be longer, a little bit more curly, swooshing it out over top some of the medium value blue, and doing some blending. See how I can create that texture? I'm gonna add a little bit and blend in some of the dark value, the dark navy blue, so that I can cut in right here at the bottom and also on the outside of the top. Excellent. So now let's work on the body. we're not going to start on this gray area. We're going to work around it, leaving this little gap here. And it's quite dark. So let's start with our navy blue with my size 2 filbert brush. And what I'll do is I'll just cut in around these clumps that I left for the traceable. Working to about there, and then I'll go to my medium value there. But down here, I'll start adding hair that comes down and comes more vertical, more up and down. And then on this side, it's more curving and facing that way down into the left. Do you notice right here, there's a little bit of a highlighted fur, but then it gets darker again? Yep, those are those subtle value changes that we can't miss. Okay, so I'm leaving some white. I'll go out a little bit further, bringing it all the way up to this side. And then I'll move out with my medium blue. Using that, just like this kind of same texture we created. I brought up that medium value a little too much, so I'm going to go back to my dark navy blue and bring that back down. It's a little darker on this shoulder compared to the left.
So for this part, I again recommend you watch me first, then give it a go. I'm going to work opposite that dark navy blue fur on the right shoulder, okay, along this line. Still, again, leaving white in between those two values, working with my medium navy blue all the way to the end of the lower right of our canvas or paper.
I'll also work this medium navy blue closer to the inside. And then carefully making sure my brush strokes are going the correct way with my light navy blue over top that white. My brush strokes are like this, but then they start to get more facing downward. Then I go back to my dark navy blue and I correct the fur texture a little bit more over top that light value. I want some blending to happen, so it helps me create that nice value change from dark to light. I'll bring this medium value up along the bottom of this face. We're going to be adding some of our light browns and tans there. This side looks a bit thin, and I know it is actually thinner in the photo, but I'm going to bring it with my dark navy blue. I want to make sure that I could bring it up a little higher, and then I'll just add the texture over top with our medium gray.
Hi, Meow Meow. So going back to my size 0 round brush and our dark navy blue, we can go back and add in a bit more darkness. See where the white that I left? I'm going to carefully, with my fur texture just like we used here, but a little shorter, I'm going to bring that up a little bit, a little higher on that side, and then same on this side. Now I'm going to recommend you bring this all the way down to where we've left white along the chest, that area of white. Bring this dark gray down to that point. I spot this later, but why not do it now? This should be dry, so let's go back to our navy blue again with our 2\0 liner brush, making it symmetrical to the other side. You don't want hair to come out further or not enough compared to the other side. So remember, just like we did on the left side, we want some clumps of fur, we want some single lines, we want overlapping, some strands going up, some down. And we also want to make sure that the length on the left is equal to that right. Just remember that detail brushes do not hold much paint or water. It's so important to have a paper towel or cloth handy so you can dab your brush damp, not dry and not sopping wet either. It can really make a big mess and ruin a lot of your hard work. As I'm doing this, I'm also going to cut in a little bit more to our line. I'm getting rid of that line where it was the medium value with the dark value. I'll do the same thing on the other side, just to paint over that line. We don't want that edge. So I'm actually using more lines at a different angle to break up that hard edge. I also see that these values aren't super dark where we added that ear base, that color. So I'm going to darken it up by adding lines there too. Same thing on the other side below that right ear. Once more, I'm just going to add more lines, bringing that in a little further. I'll also bring this down and fill this in with our dark navy blue instead of the medium navy blue. And I even brought it down just along the chest, just where I want it to be darker. Now I'm going to do something we haven't done yet and add a glaze. We have dark ears, but we have much darker value fur in our painting, and inside the ears should actually be really dark. So I'm going to take this navy blue, add some of my paint water to it, shoo fly, and with this glaze, I'm going to add this darkness inside the ear, connecting it to this dark area on the fur. I don't want it to be too strong a value and blocky looking, so I'm going to take some of it off and kind of blend it inside the ear. And I'll do that on both sides. We also have a few highlights there. So I'm going to do a mix between their light value and a medium value. If it's dried for you, I'm just mixing up some more. Mine's dried too. And with more wispy lines and gaps in between, I'll add some right along that left shoulder. So it's time to replace our water, refresh it, and we'll move to our grays and browns. So next we're going to mix up a gray. Going to start with white, adding a little bit of black. We want to start with a medium gray. So it's going to be lighter in value than this light value, but because it's white fur, it's going to be much lighter medium value. Is it starting to make sense now? So this is going to be our medium value gray, and then to lighten it up, we'll just simply add more white. So before, you want to make sure this area is dried before we add this. And I'll fill in the most of the white with my size 0 round brush with my medium value gray, and then I'll use my liner brush to create the texture over top. So here's the thing. I don't want to lose the outline around this. So before we move on to this medium gray, which is literally identical to the medium gray we added to the mouth, I am switching to my liner brush, and very carefully
I'm going to separate those values with a strip of white.
I'm going to carefully apply this white on the left and right sides, on the bottom of the mouth, but not at the very front of that chin. Okay, not at the front.
But it does get a bit darker down here. So we'll solve that problem when we get there. But as for now, it's just on the left and right of the mouth with our white. And now I can go back with my size 1 round brush with my medium gray and paint that in. I'm going to first just outline around that mouth. All right, so I think we'll be safe here. Even though we didn't highlight the front of the chin, I think it's safe that we won't have to. We'll see as we move along. Now out from there, I want to apply these lines the way the fur is going. So notice I added these lines like this. This fur is going to move up like that, so I'll push my gray up in that direction, and then same on the left side, but in the opposite. Bringing it down in the front, covering up that white. And then what I'll do, now I'm going to pull in some of the white into this gray. So I have mostly white, mostly white and just a little bit of this medium gray. Set that brush aside and then use my 2/0 liner brush to cover up the rest of the white and carefully add these curving, fluffy strands of fur over top the navy blue, one at a time with the light gray now. I'm gonna have to add some more white because I just don't have enough mixed up. It's getting more light up here, this white is. So that's why I'm filling this in underneath this little strip that we left. That's going to be the brown tan fur. Remember, the fur is going in all different directions, but be careful that the end is fine and thin. I just made it a little too thick. So the fur gets a bit shorter down here, but it still is curly. So ever so carefully create those curls. I'm not going to add the leash. And you know what? I did what I said I wouldn't do. I missed that little strip below here. So I'm pausing for a second from that area, going to the medium gray. I'm covering up some of my work because I want to overlap that with the lighter strands of white. So I'll just add that little strip with these wispy lines and covering up over top this navy blue area. It kind of like curves this way. And then I'll go back to that light, very light gray. I just got to mix up some more. That's medium gray with white. And then I'll also be highlighting some of this fur, just a little bit, not too much, mostly right underneath the chin. I'm overlapping some of the navy blue with these strands of white. All right, now I'll pull some up, bringing those hairs up with our light gray. This is the light gray. I'll bring this over a little bit more than I've done already. Bringing it over. Now we're going to go back to this gray in a little bit. I want to get the brown areas now. So take your time if you're still working. I'm going to move to adding some raw sienna. As well as one of my favorite colors, yellow ochre. I'm going to mix up yellow ochre and raw sienna, equal parts. First, I'm going to just add this to the face. There's really not much. And then I'll go in with the highlights with this next color, which is, I pulled some of this aside with more yellow ochre and white. Don't need much, just a little bit will do us. And so with our first mixture that we mixed up of yellow ochre and raw sienna, I'm going to fill in those eyebrows, finally filling those in. I have my size 0 round brush. I'm going to fill in the white and then add that texture with my liner brush. So here I go, refining those eyebrows with my liner brush, 2/0 liner brush, pulling it over top that white and into some of that navy blue. Now, if you watch me for this next step, we're gonna find where to place, which I think is gonna be right here, those areas. And so I have on my liner brush this mixture of yellow ochre and raw sienna. And where we initially added this medium navy blue, on the left side, I'm just gonna carefully add these clusters of lines. They're kind of patchy, with large gaps in between, carefully at the bottom here. And this goes all the way in towards this white that we have, which I'm also going to fill in with this color. See how I brought the hairs? It's very patchy. I have just lines with gaps in between. And then I'm going to fill this area in. And now I'll fill in the rest of this white here, but also bringing it out over top some of that navy blue. I'm going to bring those out. They're just not quite visible, so I just add another layer over top. Excellent. Same on the right side. I want to make sure they're symmetrical, so right where we added that medium blue, going in the opposite direction now. They're actually going to join to about here. I'm going to start there and work up towards where I was just working. Oh, that might have been a little too long. It was. Lines are a little too long, so I'm going to go back to my navy blue. They're not supposed to be that long. All right, and then I'll also fill this white in and then bring it out. I'm just going to bring this up a little higher just because of how high I made this side. And what I'm going to do with my medium value navy blue is now work in front of it. Oh, it's not dark enough. My dark value navy blue. Cut in front of it with my dark value navy blue on both sides.
Now, something that's been bothering me a little bit, it's probably not that obvious to you, maybe it is, with my liner brush and dark navy blue, I'm going to go in with some dark navy blue lines. It's going to be a little darker on that left shoulder, and I just brought it in, up and in. So up towards that light value we added and in towards this dark area here. I'll also add a little bit of my dark value on where we added the medium value here. I'm mixing in some of the medium value with the dark navy blue. And I'm also going to take my medium value, doing a little touch-ups here. I washed off my liner brush and going with my medium value gray. And I'll pull this over a little more because this is kind of a gap. I want to get rid of that gap. Okay, so you know where else we have this mixture of our yellow ochre and raw sienna? We have it on the ears. I should say the inner left, inner right of our ears. So first I'm going to start with my liner brush, carefully adding these really long strands of fur. And they get shorter, they don't come all the way down here, okay? They're really long. We'll have to add a few layers because it's so thin, it's showing the dark navy blue behind it. And I'm gonna have some of them cut over top some of the inner pinks. And I'll do the same on the other ear. Be careful you don't make your lines too thick, just like I did. You want them thin and long. I'll even bring a few in front of the bottom of the ear, just a few more. And then a little bit of these wispy long hairs on the other side. Now it looks like actually light gray hairs that are coming out from the ear, but they're dark, they're more of a medium gray. I'm going to test something out. I'm going to go with my medium gray, see how this looks. By adding medium gray hairs, yes, I think this will work, guys. So very carefully with our medium gray that we mixed up for the chest area, these hairs go along the left side, and then I can bring them in a little bit more. I'm going to do this. I'm going to dab, 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 lighten this up.
Carefully, let's practice our fine lines and dabbing with our fingers on the right ear now. I'm going to mix up another glaze, going in with my navy blue before it dries, adding in more water to it. Let's darken up the ear yet again, right at the bottom. Dab, dab, dab. Don't want it to be too extreme. Same thing on the other side. And then we'll blend that with our permanent red. So here I go. Let's mix up some medium gray with permanent red and a little bit of our navy blue. I'm going to need a little bit more of my medium gray. Even more medium gray. It's a little too dark, so a little bit more navy blue. Not digging it.
Do you see a hint of violet coming out? Yep, permanent red with a bit of medium gray, and that helps to give the illusion of this purple. So we're gonna add that, a thin layer over top both ears where we've added the pinks, not entirely covering up the pinks, okay? And then we'll add in more violets to really complement the yellows.
I'm going back to my navy blue to get this real dark inside here. Also, darkening up, I'm going to have to mix up some more. Black with phalocyan and blue, but more phalocyan and blue than black. With my size 0 round brush. So with my size 0 round brush, I'm going to now darken up this area of the ear.
Now notice I'm not bringing this all the way out to the edge. I'm not entirely covering up that first layer of navy blue for our ears. I'm keeping that. I'm also not going to cover up all our previous work with our permanent red and gray. Use the dabbing technique or the dry brush technique to just add a thin layer. And also we're reaching it behind those long strands, those long inner ear hairs. Okay, this is a bit tricky, so use your finger to pull off any paint so it's not this block that's at the top of the ears. And we'll do that same technique on the right side, keeping things symmetrical.
Dry brush technique where I barely have much paint on my brush.
And I'm using what little paint I have left on my brush to add a very subtle layer behind these inner ear hairs.
I'll add just a little bit of this in front of those gray strands. You see a little bit of that darkness there along the ear. I'm going to have to go back over the grays for that. I'll do that on both ears. Okay, so here I go again. We're reworking, just redoing the medium gray, sorry, without getting any paint on my canvas, any of your work. Let's just add those inner ear hair strands carefully over top. And I'll just pull them to there. I won't bring them all over top this beautiful indigo that we've created. I love that color. What a beautiful color. I'm gonna add some back in, cutting in now between some of these grays.
And again, that's our mixture of permanent red, black, and white.
Now, do you know where else we can add this medium gray?
We can add it to this dog's mane. These long, dark navy blue hairs that we've added at the ends of them and cutting in a little, we can add them on the left and right. Now I'll add less of this color, but we'll go back to our brown yellow mixture and do the exact same thing. If you might have overdone it with the medium grays like I did, you can apply this over top some of the medium grays, and we'll do some touch-ups with our dark navy blue.
And if there's a line that you added that just doesn't look right, you can go back to your navy blue or mix up some navy blue and fix it. Paint right over it. Sometimes I just like to test it out, see if it looks all right. And if it doesn't, I just paint right over it. But if it does, I tried. I at least tried. So I am going to mix up some more black and Finalizing blue. Doing some touch-ups on that fur.
Now, to help this fur look more realistic, the area closest to the dog's face, I'm going to keep more dark navy blue. But on the ends of those strands, that's what I'm primarily pushing that paint out to the end of those strands and clumps with our browns and medium grays.
Going back to my grays. All right, so where else we can add this, but not just the medium gray, the lighter medium gray where we added white to it, with my liner brush, I'm going to create more fur texture over top this edge on the bridge of the nose, but making sure it comes to a point at the very top of that marking. And then on the right side, it comes back out again.
The fur on the face and muzzle is very short, so keep your lines really short and clean. I'm going to do some refining of those lines a little bit with my medium value navy blue. I also, with my liner brush, I'm going to add a bit more fur texture with my liner brush with our lightest value navy blue and added white to go a bit lighter, adding that contrast that I always try to add more of at the end. First, watch how I apply these delicate rows of lines, then you try. Between the eyes, do you notice how I'm curving these rows of lines with the same length and the same width? They're longer than those short lines we just added on the muzzle, but shorter than the lines for the mane. I'm going to add a second row above this one, leaving a gap in between those rows. And you'll notice quickly that although this looks very bright now, in a second it'll look much darker and fade in, and that's what we want. I'll also add a few right below the first row we started. And the reason for this change in value is just because acrylics will dry darker than how it appears wet. Now, if your lines, you don't like the lines or they're too light, go in with the original light navy blue or even add a bit of the medium navy blue to bring it down. I'm going to add some of my medium value actually with some of this light value. Lighten up the area below the eye, just a smidge. Now I'm not just filling in the area below the eyes, I'm curving lines. I'll bring this down along the muzzle a little bit more than we have it, just so it matches the left side. Oh, a little too much. I'm going back to my medium value so I can frame that a little bit better. I always say at this point, step back and look at what your painting needs. We're in the refining phase, so yours might need slightly different refinements. I'll go back to my light value. Now we're just touching up values here. My original light value, not my lightest value. We want to carefully bring up and out our medium and light values just a little bit with that fur texture. So again, the light value navy blue, that's what I'm using now. Touching up some of those strands in front of the ear, bringing them up a little bit in front of the ear. I can even get a bit lighter there. I'm going to go back to my white with the light value navy blue. There's a big strong highlight right here. Giving it a bit of texture there too. Without going over my work, because my hand is just so full of paint, I'll add a bit more with the light navy blue. We want to add, again, those short lines, but subtle, going in the same direction that we applied that white marking over top the medium blue. I definitely need to better join this medium value with the dark value. So I'll take those two values. We actually went with our light value and the dark value. I'll mix those two together. It's probably going to look like our medium value, but I'm going to add more of the lighter value, okay? And ever so carefully with fur texture, clusters of lines. That's what I'm going to use with my size 0 round brush to just better join those together.
so it's not so sharp and harsh. And that purple is calling my name, so I'm going to pull those purples out even more. This purple's just been sitting over here hanging out. So with my size 0 round brush, I'm going to mix up white and violet. I'm going to add water to it to now add a glaze. A subtle bit more violets there. Just add and then dab. Add, then dab. Add, then dab. It'll help bring out those yellows.
Now repeat this step one more time or even 2 or 3 more times with the glaze to really draw out those beautiful purples.
Then medium value navy blue. I'll actually bring in some of this highlighted fur in a little bit more, just bothering me, this big empty space. I'll do the same on the right side, just highlighting some strands, getting rid of some of that dark navy blue space there. I'll also cut some strands out, just a little bit on that left shoulder into the yellow. I think mine also needs a bit more dark navy blue clumps. Dark navy blue clumps. So I'm going to go back to my dark navy blue. With the dark navy blue, I'll add a bit of texture to the ears. Ooh, there's a good one. Look, I'm going to darken up this area in front of the ears. Didn't even see that, but just because I added one area, it helped me discover another. I think I'll refine this line because it looks like too clumpy of a fur strand. And then I'll touch that up with my yellow brown. We can go to our lighter yellow brown, okay? Our lighter yellow brown, and highlight now, curving my lines, but highlighting those
eyebrows just a little bit. I'll do some touch-ups around those eyebrows. So make sure this area around the muzzle is done. Mine is actually not. I have a little bit of white, little specks of white on this area. So you want to make sure that area is done and dried before adding the whiskers. All right, so that, I'm going to use a light gray for that. Now these are not like cat whiskers, they're much shorter, so we don't have to bring them all the way out, just little short light gray lines.
Now take your time here. The key is only to add a very small amount of paint to a damp liner brush. You don't want lots of water, you don't want lots of paint, and you just want a careful, steady hand, keeping the thinnest point, the end of that whisker, and the thickest point where it attaches to the muzzle.
Now I'm right-handed, so I'm going to hold my hand and carefully wish these short lines, carefully bring it over top the dark gray areas around the mouth and in towards the muzzle. If you add too many and too long, it starts to look like a cat or mousy, and we don't want that. I think I'm going to go one shade lighter with the light gray on the muzzle. I'm going to add white to that color we just used for the whiskers with my size 0 liner brush, or round brush.
So with dabs and lines, I'm carefully adding this to the very top of the bridge of the nose, over top the medium gray. I'm also going to accentuate that smile and add a bit to the left and right as well. Now, if you already haven't, I'm going to recommend you touch up the mane. Just make sure you bring out those grays and those browns to the ends of those strands. We have reached the end of this Border Collie tutorial, guys. I hope you found it relaxing and taught you a lot about dog painting technique. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.